All right. Well, welcome to Making Business Personal. Tony Swatton, how are you?
Doing good. How you doing, Jason?
I'm doing good. I'm really good. This has been a crazy day, but it's been a good day. So we don't use video on this. I use video solely for um, promotional purposes. Like I'll create screen grabs and stuff. And yours is going to be the best screen grab because you're surrounded by crossbows and swords and helms and all of those things. Tony, why are you surrounded by an arsenal of arms and armor?
My shop, The Sword and the Stone, has made weapons and armor for over 300 feature films and been in museums and private collectors and all kinds of stuff since I don't know, since I started the business in 1988.
So since 1988, if someone has seen a film or a TV show where someone uses an edged weapon, a crazy club, they use armor, they something, chances are you might have made it.
Especially in the early 90s, early 2000s. The last few years, a lot of things have gone to Europe or New Zealand and things where I haven't had a part in it.
Okay. Why is that? Why the switch?
I don't know. I mean, it's like they're filming out of out of country or out of state. So a lot of times, for instance, if I make swords for Master and Commander, or for Last Samurai, those were going concurrently in 2003. The pieces that I made got shipped to New Zealand to Weta workshops where they molded them and made rubber and fiberglass facsimiles of the pieces, the real weapons I created. So, it's just wherever they use the vendor.
So you were concurrently making swords that would be appropriate for 18th century seafaring warfare, and you were making swords for a samurai film that took place when? In the 12th century, 13th century? When did that take place?
Well, it was also 19th century
Oh,
because
okay.
the storyline for The Last Samurai, Tom Cruise was in as a Civil War officer in Japan with the weapons from the Japanese samurai. So I created about 600 swords, either historical Civil War sabers and stuff like that, as well as ninja weapons and katanas, wakisashis, and tantos that went to, filmed across, a lot of it was being filmed in New Zealand. Um, when I got commissioned to do those 600 weapons, and it, all starts off at like 10 or 20 and then progressed to a massive undertaking. I also got approached to do the swords for Master and Commander. Now, that was an 18th century or, early 19th century because it's Napoleonic time period. So 1812 to about 1820. So the weapons that I made for the British, American, and French boarding axes and stuff for that show was going. On top of that, I got approached from Disney to do Pirates of the Caribbean. So the funny story on that, they knew I was slammed with like 800 weapons to be created for these other two features. So they only brought me like 25 pieces. I did Norrington's sword, Jack Sparrow's sword, Barbossa's sword, and, principal characters, but they took all of the extra swords to 4 or 5 different prop houses across town, who in turn brought it to me. So I did maybe 50 pieces for the production directly, and then I did 200 pieces for other prop houses
So
indirect.
so you were directly commissioned to make the important swords. No, I shouldn't say important, but the featured swords.
Principal
And
character.
then
Yeah.
and then you got basically pawned off their work for you to make for the swords.
I'm in a pretty unique position. I started my business as in my mom's garage, progressed to a small shop in North Hollywood. Was working on my first major feature was Hook, and then got into a shop in Burbank that was About 2,400 square feet. And I was there for 25 years until I'm at my current location, which is 4,000 square feet. So I have millions of dollars in production equipment um, for Last Samurai and Pirates and some of the simpler pieces. I was making 35 swords each day. I was making 7 swords an hour on, 5 hours of until I had to take a break. So
Now, a lot of people have seen films like I think they did. I think there was a scene like this. Well, there definitely was a scene like this in one of the Lord of the Ring films. I don't remember which one. I think it was the second one. People have seen a lot of films where there's cutouts of what a sword will be, and then there's molten steel or molten iron poured into those, so they'll make 35 swords in the movie and blah blah. So a lot of people probably think that's all you're doing is pouring molten metal into a mold. How wrong are they?
that's entirely wrong. I do foundry work, and what you're seeing in, like Lord of the Rings and Conan, where they're pouring it into a stone mold. Um, I do that type of work showing historical pieces, casting bronze weapons into an open face stone mold, or I'll do sand casting, pouring bronze or aluminum into a sand mold, or I'll do investment casting, either with shell casting or lost wax investment, um, where basically I make a wax model, put it inside plaster of Paris, burn it out, and pour molten metal into that. None of those pieces would have any application in any kind of things for films. They just wouldn't hold up. Purely decorative. So
So was there ever a time in history when an armorer had to make multiple weapons, either spearheads or swords, and they would pour molten steel, or are they all hand forged traditionally?
it would all be forged. I mean, it could be ground. I mean, they use big sandstone wheels traditionally in medieval Europe, driven by huge water wheels, and they could do, what in modern times is called stock removal grinding.
Hmm.
They would forge out a blank of a sword and then grind it to shape, more details. But that's more labor intensive than forging to get the principal shape on it.
So I know that you're a student of film. Like you, I mean, you're a student of everything. Like your
Yeah.
book collection's insane. And but if you look back on the history of cinema, going all the way back to the silent film era, you know, Robin Hood and the Thief of Baghdad and all that stuff, going all the way back then till now, can you think of a few weapons that you didn't make, either because it was before your time or someone else got it, that you say, God, I would have liked to crack at that one? Like, I would have liked to take a stab at that.
There's a few things that I would have loved to have done. I mean, I'm looking across my showroom at a sword that came from a Western costume that was used in Robin Hood. So the hilt was used in Robin Hood. I made
In Errol Flynn's Robin Hood?
right, and
Oh,
then
wow.
I've done pieces for restored cup hilt rapiers for collector for Joe Musso, who recently passed away, who has a collection of the uh, Bowie knives from the Alamo. So Joe had what they call the Musso Bowie, which I replicated on top of Last Samurai Master Commander and Pirates of the Caribbean in 2003. I also did the Alamo, doing all the Bowie knives for that and Santa Ana swords and things. So, but yeah, Robin Hood would have been a fun one with Errol Flynn. I have worked
Okay.
on swords handled by Errol Flynn. Um, there's a stunt coordinator, sword master named Bob Anderson. Bob's, passed away a few years ago, and he was almost 100 when he passed. But he had trained with Errol Flynn. He was the sword master on Highlander. He was the sword master on Princess Bride. He was in Darth Vader's
I know
costume.
exactly who you're talking about. English guy, right?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
so Bob came into my shop. I don't know if we were working on Zorro or Pirates of the Caribbean. And he turned to his associate. And I haven't gone to work yet. I have this green in my beard, and the dirt is just kind of a normal patina, coloration. But when I'm working, I get filthy. I mean, I'm the epitome of blacksmithing.
They
You
call it a
know,
blacksmith
fil-
for a reason. Yeah.
yeah. So I'm all covered with all kinds of crap, and Bob comes in and he turns to his assistant and he goes, "Yeah, he reminds you of Clancy, doesn't he?" And I'm like 6'2", 300 something pounds, covered with dirt and maybe bleeding a lot of times. And I'm like, "Clancy, well, that's a girly name." And he's like, "Clancy Brown, the Kurgan from Highlander." And I'm like, "Well, that's a good comparison to make." So, but
Clancy Brown, man, talk
yeah,
about a great character actor. He's done some good work over the years.
I know. And Mr.
Um,
Krabs.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, he was in Starship Troopers, a movie that I think spawned 4 sequels, all direct to video. But
Okay. I didn't realize that. I mean, I love Robert A. Heinlein,
yeah, yeah,
and I'm
yeah,
reading a lot of it currently just because of his writings in the 60s and 70s about the crazy years and seeing what's happening in the United States currently.
yeah. Yes, 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 yes. So you and I talked about this, I think a week ago or 2 weeks ago when we saw each other. Um, so we're in the California Knife Makers Association, and we were at a meeting and we were talking about this. And I asked you kind of jokingly, so did you go to school to be a blacksmith? Like, did you, did you, when you were 12 years old, say, so mom, dad, listen, here's what I want to do. I want to get into metallurgy and I want to learn all the characteristics of steel and I want to learn proper hammer technique. So I'm going to go to college for that. It's somewhere in, Estonia and do that. Is that how you got started?
No, it's kind of a fated situation. I was actually born in England. I'm a dual citizen. I was born in Hammersmith, London. So, I mean, first strike. Um, my mother's maiden name was Blackman from coal mining and blacksmithing, second strike. And Swatton is either derived from, kind of Midlands, England, or could be derived from Saxon Germany, Schwartzman, meaning blacksmith. So
Hmm.
those are the three things. My mom was a registered nurse. My dad was a Rolls-Royce mechanic. Had served 7 years apprenticeship at Shepherd's Bush, building everything from the Rolls-Royce from the ground up. I have no interest whatsoever in cars. I have machines that can build all kinds of car parts and things, but um, you
You
know,
don't even own a car.
no, I'm 62 years old. I just turned 62 a couple days ago, and I've never driven a car. I do not have a driver's license. So
So you are probably the only able-bodied person in Los Angeles who doesn't drive a car.
probably, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
um, I like to call it eccentric.
Yeah,
I
yeah, it's a good
mean, but
euphemism. Yeah.
Ray Bradbury didn't drive. There are a couple people out
Yeah,
there that,
but they
but
they're
again,
out there.
so age of 7, we immigrated to Vancouver, Canada. My sister and my brother was born in Canada. I was always fascinated by everything. I just wanted to see, it could be a rock, it could be a tree, it could be, flowers, it could be bees, it could be animals, whatever. I was just interested in anything I ever saw. Rocks happened to be something I could pick up. So I was an aspiring rock hound. I like to tell people I was only a pebble pup up in Vancouver. By the time I moved down to Southern California when I was 7, I found ballast rocks along the railroad tracks by my mom's house that had a metamorphic rock called serpentine. It looked like jade, but much softer. And I didn't have the patience to put it into a tumbler and wait 6 weeks to get a tumbled finished stone. So I started spitting on the concrete sidewalk to wet it down to lubricate it and rubbing the stone to shape the stone. So, I mean, going back, techniques that the Egyptians and, ancient peoples and the Native Americans had used to cut their stones. By the time I was 13, I had lapidary machinery, stone cutting equipment, and then I needed to make jewelry for it. So I kind of pestered a person who did silversmithing, learned how to do silver work, making silver bezels and rings. Indian jewelry was popular in the 70s. And my high school was right up the street from George Nelson Cooper's shop that was shared with Jody Sampson and Alex Collins. So I would go down and watch this, crazy man, Jody, grinding swords. And soon after high school, he made the Conan swords. So that was pretty instrumental there. And then probably junior or senior year of high school, I joined a group called the Society of Creative Anachronism and started making armor, predominantly like chainmail armor. I would get the wire from the LA Equestrian Center. It'd be old rusted baling wire. And I would, knit chainmail out of it, 4-to-1 international pattern chainmail. And then started doing Renaissance fairs and everything else from there. But that was the start of it. And eventually, I outgrew my mom's garage. I didn't outgrow
Yeah.
it. The city determined that I was making too much noise, and I had outgrown it. I had to get a retail location.
Yeah, that's one of the problems of being a blacksmith in your yard is that it's not a quiet pastime. So
I'm sure your neighbors probably enjoy it.
well, I'm in a relatively creative neighborhood, so I've got the car guy across the street, the woodworker next door, the motorcycle guy down the street. So and whenever I'm hammering on the anvil, they're all like, "Oh, what's Jason doing?" And they all want to play. So as long as somebody doesn't move in to stir the waters, I'll be fine.
When I first moved into this location, I was doing work for Blizzard Entertainment, doing a YouTube show called Azeroth Armory. So it was a vacant building. It was like uh, I don't know, it was a front for, I think, the Armenian mafia selling stuff. They had like 30 to 60 people with phones, making junk calls out of the showroom. They moved out. I moved in, had immediately set up my shop. And my neighbors are Technicolor and JL Fisher. So I'm forging out big pieces using power hammers, and it's causing local seismic activity. So everyone's rushing out for my neighbors' buildings. So I have machines that weigh over 15,000 pounds that create a little bit of localized seismic activity. I like that.
I would imagine. So from the story you just told me, you were interested in rocks. You found a fascination with creating something beautiful from something rough, something that most people would walk by, and you saw that there's potential there, and then you want to take a step further, and so you found somebody who could teach you something you didn't know, a silversmith, and then you start knitting rusted wire to make armor, and you are hanging out at a Ren fair. Now, that's the kind of beginnings that most people would say, Tony, get your head out of the clouds. You live in Southern California. It's one of the most expensive places in the world to live. You're never going to make a living knitting chicken wire. So learn a vocation or go to school and become an accountant or a doctor or a lawyer, and then do that as a hobby. How did you overcome that?
Didn't know any better. I mean, as an immigrant coming from Europe, I went back to England for a year in 1975. We lived with my grandmother and grandfather in Paddington, London. Across the street were corrugated iron fences with buildings that had been bombed during the Blitz in World War II. They hadn't been rebuilt. So in the 60s, when we moved to Canada, it was still devastated. In fact, my father's father, my grandfather, he was a policeman in World War II who died from shrapnel incurred from bombing from the German Blitz of London. So it's kind of crazy. I always thought he was a hero. He was actually up in the flat drinking Guinness when the bombs went off instead of listening to the air raid sirens. But still, I can, picture that. So, we came from nothing. We didn't have anything. You kind of, pulled yourself up from the bootstraps. And as you mentioned, my fascination with anything, seeing a rock, I wanted to see the inherent jewel inside of the rock. And so that's where I started polishing the stones to see that. Um, the wire was a ready source of free wire from the stables. I mean, I could have purchased it, but if I could get it for free, why not? I mean,
Yeah.
you've seen some of the pattern welded Damascus blades that I make. They
Hmm.
are made with old 15 and 20 bandsaw blades that come out of the lumber mills up in Pacific Northwest. And then I've got a scrap yard that I've worked with um, since I was in my teens when I was collecting aluminum cans from the neighbor's trash to recycle. Um, so I've known these people since I was 12 or 13 years old, and they save record masters for pressing vinyl records. I shear those up, laminate it with the 15 and 20 bandsaw blade, and buy new 1075 or 1095 steel, and then forge weld it together and come up with beautiful patterned, expensive blades. So from, relatively inexpensive parts.
I think that one of the things you just said can sum up, and it's not a summation of you because you're a multifaceted and incredibly complicated person, but uh, you could see that there was a gem inside the stone, and you
Right.
wanted to bring the gem out from the stone. How has that philosophy helped you in life? Because I mean, the same thing with the rusted wire, the same thing with the saw blades that someone just thinks are trash. How have what other aspects of your life do you try to bring the gem out of the stone?
Well, I've given up on trying to, bring out the betterment of people because I see someone not for their exterior view, but the whole and their potential. And as you know, as a motivational speaker and everything, trying to get people out of their head to be able to be better. So I realized I can take a raw material and turn it into something of value. It could be anything. It could be a piece of wood. It could be a rock to turn into a jewel. Um, an old piece of wire that I turn into something else. I mean, it's all kind of refer to myself as a modern alchemist. I'm not actually turning lead into gold, but I'm turning, raw materials into something that has the value of gold.
Interesting side note. Yesterday, I read an article that the Hadron Collider at CERN,
Yeah,
they literally just turned lead into gold.
it's pretty incredible.
So modern alchemy has just finally done what they've been trying to do for centuries. They turned lead into gold. Now, of course, this is a $4 billion machine, so I don't think they're going to get a return on their investment. But it's fascinating that they
Well,
did that.
the same thing with some of the high pressure, making synthetic diamonds.
Yeah.
Carbon is one of the more common elements in the world everywhere, and you compress it enough, you have something like graphite, which is carbon, that's soft using a pencil lead, and you could scratch it with your fingernail, and then you have a diamond, the hardness of 10 on the Mohs scale, and it's not an incremental thing. So corundum, rubies and sapphires are a hardness of 9, and diamonds are like 100 times harder than rubies and sapphires. So, and then graphite, lead is, or hardness of 1. So, but it's the same element, carbon.
Yeah, that's fascinating to me. Sand turns into glass. It's fascinating.
Yeah,
Uh, so when you create something of value, whether it be a highly intricate um, Damascus sword, maybe it's a Turkish twist, and it took a lot of time to create that. Something with a bejeweled hilt, and it's phenomenal. How do you deal with people who have a completely different value? Someone who wants to buy it, but they have a very different concept of the value than you do, because you know, and people in the know understand, you're not going to find many of those, but
yeah.
they want to just ask you, well, how many hours did it take you to make it? And that's how they, or how much did the materials cost? And that's what they want to pay. How do you deal with that?
Um, well, when I moved to my new location, it's off of a side street in an industrial area. It doesn't have a retail showroom. For the first 3 years of moving out of my mom's garage, I was in a retail storefront in a kind of a shady neighborhood in North Hollywood. There was, prostitution, drug use, homeless people on the street. It wasn't it was what I could afford that I had to, move into. I shared the space with Alex Collins, and he was an established knife maker with the Knife Makers Guild. The American Bladesmith Society hadn't started at that point. And I was like a newcomer. And some of my initial work was making uh, jewelry and props and elements for Michael Jackson.
Hmm,
So,
I didn't know that.
yeah, so well, I mean, when Michael Jackson does the lean and he, stands
Yeah.
on stage and defies gravity, I made a clip with his costumers with John Tompkins and Michael Bush that we designed together that clips into the bottom of his heel of his shoe so he can lock on there, and they patented it. So that was in like 1990. I mean,
That's Smooth Criminal, right?
I don't know. I mean,
I think it is.
kind of
Yeah.
useless on any kind of pop culture. I do a lot of stuff that works into it, but I don't really listen to music. I disconnected my television in 1997 when I was working on Buffy and Angel and Alias and all these other shows. The actors would come to my shop, and I only knew they were actors because of their attitude, their self-importance. So,
Listen, folks, it's not a stereotype if it's true, you know?
right. I mean, there are some really down to earth, great people that I've met who work in the film industry in front of the camera. But some of them are a little full of themselves. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
But the thing is, every industry has their quirks. They have the things that most people wish they could change, or God, this is such a problem. But what they don't realize is every industry has those same quirks and problems. Every Fortune 500 company has those egomaniacs that just hog the camera and drive you nuts. They also have the silent, brilliant person that you just wish would speak up because they could take over the world if they just speak up, and then they have all the internal politics. And then you got people who say, I'm not going to play politics because it's the same everywhere. It's just different vocabulary.
it would be funny. I used to have a booth at Comic Con and speak on panels down at San Diego Comic Con. And people would come up and ask me, what do you do? And I'm like, well, what's your favorite TV show or movie or commercial, or music video? What do you like? And they would say, well, I like Charmed, and I like whatever Alice in Wonderland, and I like Disturbed. And I'm like, okay, well, I made the Minotaur for the Disturbed video. I made the Red Queen's spears and swords for Alice in Wonderland. And I did the Book of Shadows and the spirit board and all of the jewelry and weapons for Charmed. So someone says, God, that guy is so arrogant, and so full of himself. And my friend, who's a floor manager, he goes, it's not bragging if you can do it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I'm not, telling them off the bat. I'm asking, what do you like? This was my input into that.
Yeah. I mean, well, that's consulting 101. People ask me all the time, so what do you do? For me to describe what I do takes a very long time. And now people will tell me, well, Jason, you need to be able to describe it in, 2 sentences. Well, who says who? So I just say, well, what do you do? Or I'll ask them another question. What are you hoping to achieve? Or what is this? What is that? And then I continue to talk to them, ask them certain questions. Eventually they'll say something like, wow, that's like exactly what I was thinking. And I'll say, that's what I do.
Yeah. I mean, and it is the kind of the wildest thing to being as I think I went to 12 to 15 schools in 4 countries. So to move around like that, to be diagnosed with hyperactivity and not being social with stuff. I was really the outsider, but I always just, you know, um, worked my own, you know, uh, my interests. I just focused on what I wanted to do. Um, I broke some records in my high school for powerlifting. So I, deadlifted over 600 pounds and 835 pounds on the squat, and I was just really strong. So I got shamed, drawn into playing football. I didn't know anything about American football. I'd played rugby, I'd played soccer in England, but I wasn't into team sports. And so it was just kind of a weird thing. So they asked, how did you get so strong on, your lower body strength? Well, I'd set up a hopscotch, um, you know, thing out in front of my mom's house that I made up all these ridiculous rules for hopscotch where you'd have to jump 6 feet, spin around in midair, and land on your opposite foot. So I had my high school football team playing hopscotch with me because, I told them that's how I got strong.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Hey, so have you ever had an apprentice, or have you ever had someone that's been more than like a personal assistant, but somebody who was learning under you to learn the trade?
I have had a few people come in over the years. It's, um, I've done a couple, YouTube shows, Man at Arms and uh, Azeroth Armory, and been interviews on like Disney Plus and things. So a lot of people see what I do and immediately want to do that. Um, and I like, it would never be my suggestion to, follow my path to do this. Um, I've been in business since I was 15 years old. When I was 15, I was working for a rock shop that was importing rough opals from Australia. They brought in a really nice parcel of crystal black opal from Mintaby, Australia. And there was one piece that looked like it was a dud. So my boss sold it to me at a discount at like $90. And that was a lot of money to spend at, 15 years old. I went home, spent half an hour, cut that stone, and it became about a quarter size Harlequin flash opal. And it weighed like 6 carats. So I got $200 a carat for that. So I sold a rock that I paid $90 with 30 minutes of outlay of work into it and made $1,200. So at 15, I got a business license from the city of Burbank. I've got a resale number with State Board of Equalization, or whatever they call themselves now, and opened up a bank account. So I've been self-employed since I was 15. I definitely do not recommend that. So, I mean, it's like, and I'm at a point right now with the film industry where I'm kind of um, pivoting. I want to make my own kind of content. Over 1 billion people on the internet have watched me made stuff for behind the scenes things for various feature movies and stuff like that. Plus the YouTube shows I've done,
Yeah.
but I don't get any of that money. Some
Yeah.
cases I lose money making projects.
That's a staggering number. 1 billion people know who they might not remember your name. Maybe they watched the video once, but 1 billion people know who you are. That's staggering.
Well, maybe more. I mean, and again, it's this whole arrogance thing.
That's not arrogant. That's incredible.
So I go to a lot of blacksmith events, and I just get mobbed. Before I was Hollywood's secret until the early 2010 or whatever. I'd done some standalone interviews with stuff like Junkyard Wars and Tell the Truth. I was Tony number 3. two other people saying they were Tony and did what I did, you know?
Well, just think about it. I mean, after this interview, tens of more people will
Wow.
know will know who you are. But
Uh,
what's incredible is if you think about American sports, that are just American sports. Like football is primarily an American sport, even though there's going to be flag football in the Olympics. And uh, in some ways, baseball, even though it's very big in Latin America and in Japan. If you take the most famous baseball player playing right now that's not Shohei Ohtani, take Aaron Judge. Aaron Judge just won MVP. He's probably going to win again this year. He's the face of baseball. I'd be willing to bet that 1 billion people don't know who Aaron Judge is because it's an American sport. Not every American knows who Aaron Judge is, and there's 300 and something million people here. That's a staggering number.
Well, and I don't know who he is. I don't
exactly. Look at that. You don't know who he is.
I mean, I heard that Dodger Stadium is now serving Japanese food for Otami, but I mean, I bet I wouldn't recognize him.
Yeah.
It is hilarious to go
incredible.
to a place, a pop culture place like Comic-Con or a blacksmith and Abana, the Artist Blacksmith Association North America, and show up there and have people come up and want a photograph or an autograph or whatever. In 2016, I was approached by Jake James, who's a British blacksmith living in Vancouver Island. And he does these beautiful figurative sculptures of forged iron. And he wanted to forge Hephaestus at the anvil, forging out a plowshare. So he contacted me. The Abana conference that year was in Salt Lake City, Utah. And Jake goes, I want him to forge modern munitions into a plowshare, but I'm in Canada and I can't get guns. So would you be able to source out anything? So I took a GAU-8 30 millimeter Gatling gun barrel from an A-10 Warthog, sliced that up. I took a 50 caliber machine gun, Browning machine gun barrel, sliced that up. I'm trying to think what else. I think I had some steel blades that were left over from Pirates of the Caribbean, and I laminated a 121 layer billet of super alloy, the GAU-8 barrel is just like, it fires like 1,800 rounds a minute of an 1.25 inch diameter bullet that's like 9 inches long. And 1,800 of those in a minute, the barrels get hot enough that they start melting and they have to decommission them. And that's how I got that. So I turned that into a plowshare. But yeah, it's just bits.
So I asked you.
So the rest of that story, as I segued off into the ether, we had a dinner and I was there separate. So I got sat at a table with a guy named Rick Smith, who teaches at Southern Illinois University. As you'd mentioned earlier, when I started, there was no school to go to learn this. But at this point, you could go to Southern Illinois University in Carbondale and take a blacksmith sculpture class. And Rick Smith taught that class, so renowned throughout the United States. And then there's a school in Hereford, Wales in the UK. Spacing on her name, but it'll come back to me. She was there. And then there was a German smith who was teaching either in Germany or Sweden. So the European smith thing, a renowned educator, bugs me. I don't remember the Hereford College woman, but and Rick Smith. And I'm sitting at a table and people are coming up to me and interrupting their dinners, asking for my autograph. And they just look at me like, who are you? We are the noted authorities in this field worldwide, sitting at a table. You happen to get placed with us, but, why are they asking you for your autograph? And I said, well, I make stuff on the internet, I guess I'm an influencer.
Yeah, exactly. We've talked about this before. You have gone to see people in Europe. You have worked at some of the most prestigious museums in the world, and you have been amongst people who you consider to be masters of the art that you practice. And those same people refer to you as Master Swatton. And that makes you uncomfortable.
You know, it's gratifying in some ways to have someone. Um, Case in point, I had idolized Scott Langton. Scott had made the Sutton Hoo sword, replicated it. That was at the British Museum. So when I'd go back to England, I'd visit the British Museum and probably drooled gallons of saliva over this display case of his work. And eventually I did stuff similar. And Scott came out. I was demonstrating at an Abana conference in 2014 in Delaware, and all of my prepared stuff. I mean, if you're going to make something, you want to have like some pre-bakes. You want to have the correct, ingredients to make something work. And I'm working in a tent with borrowed equipment, and everything I prepared disappeared. So I just bought parts off in the tailgate areas, just buy whatever was available, a jackhammer bit, a leaf spring, a blade, some new steel, bought some borax, bought some, boric acid, roach killer, mixed it all up. And in front of a live audience, including someone I idolized, everything, the forge welds all stuck, the grinding on a new grinder that I just got that morning. I nailed it. It went against everything Murphy's Law says. The more likely you're going to screw up is the importance of your audience. And I had a very important audience, and everything worked, and it was really cool. Scott has come out and visited my shop from Michigan. He sends me little trinkets. He sent me a little pamphlet from the Sutton Hoo ship burial, signed by him. Just it's super cool. And it's like to be recognized by people of this qualification as their peer. There's a lot of imposter syndrome going on.
So let's talk about the imposter syndrome. What does imposter syndrome feel like to you? Why do you call it that? How does it feel?
Um, I don't feel that even with doing this for 47 years professionally, that I've achieved my masterpiece. So to be referred to as a master just seems a little, but the same point when I'm selling something, I create something, all I see is the flaws and how I could have made it better. I let my customer client see what they want to see and emphasize the positive attributes instead of pointing out, oh, it's a half-inch shorter because I had a weld flaw in here and I had to cut it down, or I had a heat treating element and there was a microfracture, so I just shortened it down. So things, I think with working with gemstones, that if you screw up, you've shattered the stone, but you can make multiple stones out of it instead of one perfect stone. And going for perfection is, I don't know, it kind of messes you up. I mean, you can, there's good enough and you can always strive to do better, but, and a lot of what I do in the film industry is in ridiculous lead times. I've made full suits of armor to fit a 5-year-old in 4 days, 96 hours. I couldn't move my right arm. It was completely froze up. I lost peripheral vision from exhaustion in my left eye. It came back, but it's like your body's not designed to work to that degree. So
Let me ask you this, and I'm putting you on the spot but maybe you think about it. I don't know. Um, if you look back at your career, can you give me, let's say five pieces that you've made that are in the, they're in the public zeitgeist. Like people would know them because, they were in very popular movies or whatnot. So either they fall into that category, it falls into the category of you didn't know if you could make this and you actually did, and you're so proud of it because this was nigh near impossible, or another category that you want to come up with. But give me like 5 or 6 pieces over the course of your career that, I mean, these are spectacular. They're stellar. What would they be? In no particular order either. You don't have to rank them, but what are like 5 or 6 pieces?
Well, one of the first projects I did was moving into North Hollywood. I did Michael Jackson's shoes were great. He wore it to Elizabeth Taylor's wedding. The armor back then, but looking at it now for what I did in the early '90s, I could so exceed that. But during that point, I was also uh, I made the hook for the movie Hook and Peter Pan's sword, and all the other weapons there. There were some pieces bought from a Toledo sword maker, but the hook is a major piece that really kind of put my name on the map.
That's iconic. That hook is iconic. Yeah.
I did the swords for Pirates of the Caribbean. So Norrington's sword that they're all oohing and awing over, that's my work. Jack Sparrow's sword, Barbossa's sword is funny because Pirates of the Caribbean was um, the golden age of piracy, but based on a Disney theme park ride. So there was no historical accuracy. So I had a sword that was used by Christopher Lambert or Adrian Paul in Highlander 4 Endgame that was of a Valmy saber, of a civil, or not a civil war, but a Napoleonic saber. And they liked that. I extended the hilt, changed the pommel, and thinned down the blade for Jeffrey Rush to use. But so I did the weapons for Pirates of the Caribbean, um, the weapons for Zorro,
Zorro, with Antonio Banderas. Yeah.
Antonio Banderas, and all the background weapons. I'm looking. If you want, I can grab Armand's sword from Zorro 2 that I got a screen used copy back. I mean, I can just reach up, grab it.
Let's take that for example, as you're grabbing that. Let's take that for example. So you're making a sword for Antonio Banderas to use in Zorro. And Zorro, one of the most famous swordsmen. God, that's so beautiful. That's so beautiful. Just hold that up a little higher, just because we'll get a screen grab. That is gorgeous. And then move it that way a little bit.
Etching and everything.
Perfect.
Down the blade. It's encrusted with jewels. Now, the sculpture on this, I had a really talented sculptor, Bryce, working with me, and I just put him loose on this to sculpt these pieces. So,
how do I add that one to my collection, Tony?
I have like 6 of them left over.
All right, there we go. There we go.
Yeah.
But okay, so let's take that sword. Does Antonio Banderas come in and handle it, and you make adjustments? Do you measure his hand? Like, how do you go about making a sword for Antonio Banderas?
Generally, in something like that, they were filming in Mexico for Zorro, and so they would give me feedback on it. The production designer and art director would come up with some ideas. I would make the sword. I would ship it down there. There was another armorer, an on-set metal worker in Mexico for Zorro's blade. It's a mishmash of swords from the Royal Armories at Leeds, of a hunting sword, and of a small sword at the Wallace Collection in London. And so I cobbled the 2 of them together and shipped it down to Mexico. And then the armorer on set cross-hatched the guard and added little holes to it. And then from that point on, I used that as a reference to make the rest of them. But I didn't meet Antonio Banderas. Sometimes the actors come in. When I'm making armor, I do need to fit the armor to the people. If I don't, I'm going off dimensions that the costumer is getting to make a textile costume. So this is a leg armor made for Megan the Stallion for Amazon Prime commercial last year,
Oh
and
yeah.
um, I told them I needed 2 weeks. They gave me 3 days, and they never gave me her dimensions. So we had to extrapolate everything, knowing her height and what she looked like on video.
There's a an organizational lesson there, which is I need 3 weeks. They gave me 3 days.
Yeah.
And that's what a high performing team or a high performer does. All right. So let's figure out the parameters. I know that this is going to take me 3 weeks, but you've got 3 days and that's the deadline. And I'm going to say yes to this. So what do I have to change from my normal routine? What do I have to change from this in order to meet that deadline? Um, there's a lot to be learned from that.
And, at a certain point, you can't throw more money and people on it. You were asking earlier about apprentices or interns, people helping me. Um, a lot of what I do is for very secretive, organizations. I mean, Disney and Marvel and Lucasfilms, they don't want to have any inkling of what's being happening. So, um, there's a few things here. I mean,
As you're getting that, let me ask you this. So, oh God, do you hear that noise? It's just fantastic. What is that from?
this is based on a sword that Jody Sampson originally cut the blade, but I added fullers and a little bit more decorative on it here.
Jeez.
This is used by space pirates and Skeleton Crew. So the Disney
Oh.
Plus, the kids thing.
Yeah, yeah. I saw every episode.
Yeah. So this is anodized aluminum, sculpted aluminum, hand ground that's been gunmetal anodized, stingray skin for the grip, and then an aluminum blade. And you heard it when I pulled it out of
Yeah, it's got
the
that great
it's got a
that,
ring.
it's
So
awesome. It's amazing. I mean, it's the dream. I mean, I always told people when I was acting professionally, I always told people that when they asked, so when do you think you'll stop? Like when do you think you might move on? And I always said, if I get cast as the third stormtrooper on the left in any Star Wars anything, there's nothing better than that. Like I'm done. And here you are making swords for a Star Wars franchise. That's incredible.
well,
So
well, and I don't know if you're familiar on the Book of Boba Fett. So Grogu, Baby
uh
Yoda,
yeah.
chooses that he's going to go the warrior's path instead of for peace. And part of that choice is he's wearing a chainmail vest.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I created that chainmail vest, but I also train Emily Swallow, the armorer from Mandalorian, who uses tools, the tongs and hammers and stuff that I made, and some of the anvils. So,
Oh yeah, she's the armorer in the show. Yeah.
right. So she comes into my shop and surprisingly fearless around, hot flames and forges and, doing stuff. But so I was training her the proper hammer technique and how to use the tools that I made for her. They called me in. That was me as the stand in for the armorer, forging out the Beskar spears to make the wire to make Grogu's chainmail. So I'm on set in the volume at Manhattan Beach Studios, forging out stuff with Star Wars while, um, it's just, and I was talking to a friend of mine who's one of the droids on Star Wars. And it was like, that was his aspirations his whole life. Now
Yeah.
he's done. He's been on Star Wars.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
You
yeah, I
know?
did that too.
So
Another fun point was in 1998. I got approached by the people doing a television show on Conan the Adventurer. It was really unwatchable except for the opening credits and the commercials, because the opening credits and commercials was me portraying Crom forging out the Atlantean sword. So, I mean, growing up reading Conan and all of Robert E. Howard's books to do that. And I've also modeled to be on the cover of short stories of Robert E. Howard. So it's just like the full range of like modeling for, a guy who's been gone for 60, 75 years. So
yeah. So you mentioned the hook. You mentioned Michael Jackson's armor. You mentioned the swords from Pirates of the Caribbean and the swords from Zorro, and then there's more and more and more. These are incredible pieces, and they're pieces that people know. Like that we're talking billions of dollars worth of ticket
Intellectual.
sales
Yeah.
and all this stuff. Yet you say that in your mind you have yet to create your masterpiece. So, what is your masterpiece? What would
Don't
that
know. I haven't.
possibly be? That's like, listen, I don't mean to put you in the same category as the great masters, but why not? That's like Michelangelo looking at the David and say, "Yeah, but I think I could do better." And is that the curse of the artist? I think I could do better.
I know I can do better. But there's always time constraints, or once you've made the one, then each one beyond that gets easier and better.
Mm,
So it's all a matter. When I was cutting gemstones, they would bring me a 5-gallon bucket of turquoise from a mine down in Mexico. And I would take this raw bucket and cut it up and dop it, attach it onto nails or wooden sticks, dowel rods to shape up cabochon stones. At the end of the week, I would hand off cut stones. So I got very good at cutting cabochon stones, and then I started calibrating them. I had to cut them to a certain oval size from a 6 by 4 millimeter up to 40 by 30 millimeter, and they all had to match the same and the everything there. So by doing literally hundreds of thousands of these individual stones, it became second nature for me. You've seen me make the spiral wrap grip
yeah,
on a sword.
yeah.
Um, I can do it without looking at the high-speed grinder that would grind my finger off. I would be talking to my audience and just spinning my hands and then hand a finished piece off in 10 minutes. Um, just doing hundreds of them, I haven't realized like the muscular memory. And you know,
What is that thing? I mentioned it at our last meeting. That type of sheath, Kybex, is that what it's called? The when
oh,
you what's it called?
polycarbonate. So
Polycarbonate. Okay,
yeah,
so
so they were short Kydex sheets.
yeah, so we talked about at the meeting. We talked about having a very simple way for people to make sheaths for a particular knife that we're all going to make for the next knife show. And someone says, oh, and it might have been me, it might have been somebody else. Hey, why don't we just make this sheath and then we can have a class? And then you say, oh yeah, we can make those in like 15 minutes. And then everyone looks at you and says, no, Tony, you can make those in 15 minutes. Like it would take us 3 hours. And that's a sign of genius. It's a sign of brilliance. That's not just muscle memory. It's it's something that you are great at.
Um,
Um,
I'm good at it. I mean, they
there he
most
goes. There he goes. I mean, I'm good at it.
well, they mostly work. I mean, and that's the other thing, like with apprentices or anyone coming in. Part of my concern with that is how much people are going to help or how much it's going to hinder me,
I
by
see.
teaching
Yeah.
someone else to do it.
Mhm.
Um, and then secondly, because of the high profile pieces I work on, um, I worked on a musician's tour making some, fancy armatures for a costume. Um, the group went on a tour last month. The guy helping me in the shop, unknown to me, had photographed everything. That was his favorite band. And then he posted the measurement chart for the lead singer of the band and progress stuff in my shop. And now he's signed a non-disclosure agreement with me. And he didn't think it meant anything to post this. And I'm like, no, you've got to pull that down. I mean, it's like you are putting the personal information of, you have the measurement chart for the lead on this band, who's one of the most popular bands in the world, and you just posted it on social media.
Yeah.
That needs to come down immediately.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
I mean,
Oh,
that's a
there's
problem.
my dog. Can you hear Atticus barking?
Cool.
um, so what's the next thing you want to learn? You have all these skills that are in different areas and you are able to do a lot of things and you're a master at many of them. What's the next thing that you say, you know what? I don't know how to do that. I want to learn how to do that.
Well, I have some equipment that are kind of leading to that. I really suck at any kind of modern technology, hence the no driving, trying to figure out, rivers.
Tony, the internal combustion engine in the car was built in the 19th century. I don't think
I
that's really modern technology.
Yeah, I could build a car. I could,
Yeah, I know.
I
You
could
just
build.
can't test drive it.
Right. I could, I just like when, people ask what you do, when they ask me what I do, and I said, I'm a smith. And they, what do you mean? I said, I smite things. I hit things with a hammer. I do leather smithing. I do copper smithing, silver
Yeah.
smithing, blade smithing, armor smithing. So I have 500 hammers. I could stop at any time, but,
No,
I,
every month you seem to be posting a lot of 50 hammers you just bought, you know?
I'm cleaning up my shop. I'm trying to start a new YouTube show where I invite people come in and
Yeah, tell us about this show. What is this show all about?
well, it's still percolating, but I'm going to call it Dreamsmith, and I've got a couple celebrities, singers, actors, directors, producers, very creative people, whether they're in front of the camera or behind the camera, who I asked them, what do you dream of? What would you ever want to have, own, or make? And I will help you make that. And in whatever medium we're going to work in, so a lot of people associate me with edge weapons. So it might be a sword, it might be a piece of armor. And I want to make certain a lot of people have come back with elements of stuff like one guy wanted to make the armor and crown and gauntlets from King Arthur from the Holy Grail.
Mhm.
And I'm like, well, that's not your original idea. And I'm also reaching out to Eric Idle and John Cleese. So picture if we get the Monty Python guys coming in, if they want to make that and someone else
Yeah.
already made it, that's not cool.
Yeah.
Another person who is hooking me up with some old school famous bands and singers, Motown singers and stuff. He wanted to do the Tin Man from Wizard of Oz. And I'm like, yeah, but come up with something unique.
Yeah, a dream.
Yeah,
Yeah.
what's your dream? Not dreaming of someone else's stuff. What is your dream? So
But see, the thing is, that's an easy question to ask,
it's a
but
difficult one to answer.
it's hard to answer. Like people
Yeah,
say, I just want to be heard. And I'll say, well, what do you want to say? And then they're silent, you know? But
right.
that should be, not that people really have business cards anymore, but that should be your business card. Tony Swatton, Dreamsmith.
Dreams to reality. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
And yeah, and the other thing is I can't make it too elaborate because, in consideration of the guest celebrity's time and my time and my videographer's time and editing, we're going to
Yeah.
keep it to us about a 6 to 8 hour build. But as you know, I can do a lot in 10 minutes. So
Yeah.
once we have the idea, we can put everything together and we'll see what it comes up with. It's going to be really, I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be um, a very interesting deal. And I've got, um, quite a few people are really um, chomping at the bit to
Yeah.
do it.
I love the idea when you first told me about it, because someone's going to have one and you're going to say to yourself, how the heck are we going to build that? And that's going to be fantastic.
Well,
That's going to be fantastic.
so Jason, the crazy thing is probably 60% of the time when I get approached by a production to make something, um, there's always the hesitation, the self-doubt, like, how am I going to do this? Can I do this? Can I do it in the time that we have to do? And am I going to be able to do this profitably to justify, making the piece in that time?
Mm.
And that's more than half of the projects that come through my door are an impossibility that I make happen.
So
So,
then, as we come to an end, let me ask you a question about that. So 60%, that's a lot.
yeah.
But you end up making it. So there's that internal war between the time that they ask you to make it and you decide you will make it. And so during that span of time is where all that doubt comes in. I mean, how can I do this? Can I do this? Will it be good enough? But then you decide to make it and there's a deadline. So what's the mindset shift that you have to make, and how do you make that to accomplish your task? How do you do that?
It's a difficult question to answer because I just do it. It's like um, the the funny thing is on budgeting on it. I know the initial number just in my head from doing it as long as I have. I know what the materials are going to cost. I know how much time it's going to take me. I know what my end price should be if I have adequate lead time. And adequate lead time is a month and a half or years in some places. If they want it faster than 6 weeks, I add an expedite fee on there. So, it's like 20% extra to do it faster than 6 weeks. So here's your price, $100 in 6 weeks. You want it in 1 week, it's going to cost you $200 if it's even feasible to do at that point. A
Mhm.
lot of times it's, generally much more than $100. Um, but they're like, we only have this much allotted towards the budget, but we really, really want this thing. And I'm like, well, I will make it for you in that expedited time, and I will rent you the item that I came up out of my head from your concept. And then you get a chance to show the image on screen. And then I have it displayed in my showroom. So a lot of times I have those pieces. And that was a very weird thing to get around. Probably 1990, I had someone, and I can't remember what it was, whether it was a piece of costuming, a prop, a knife, piece of jewelry, but the person from the studios came in and said, "We want this, and we need it in 5 days." So I quoted them $500, and they were like, "We've taken it to 5 or 6 other places that dropped the ball. We absolutely it films in 5 days. We need it." And we have a budget of $5,000. And I said, no, 500 is fine. That's going to cover my times and, get everything. I can put it together for you in 3 days. And they were like, okay. So I gave them an invoice for $500. It was a handwritten invoice. They added a zero onto it. And they came back, picked it up before they needed it, and gave me $5,000. I immediately went to the bank. The check cleared. It was mind boggling as a startup.
So
My mom's
I'm I'm
And 2
glad
weeks
you
later, they came back with a thing, and I said, "Well, what's wrong with it? I stand behind my work." They said, "Nothing. We filmed it. We've seen the dailies. We've edited it. It would cost us more than the $5,000 we paid you to archive it and inventory it. So you hold on to it, and we'll pay you again if we need to use it in the future." And a lot of the armor that I have in here, that's what I did.
so
So
you just taught one of the greatest entrepreneurial lessons that there is, which is there's I mean, I shouldn't say always or never, but I tend to say them all the time. There's almost always money. But more importantly, you you the entrepreneur, you the maker, you the creator have to know, what do other people value your work? So we always say, well, what do I value my work at? No, no, no. What do other people value your work at? You knew, oh, it's $500, but to them, it was 5,000. But the other side of that is, I have a lot of clients that will call me towards the end of the year, towards the end of the fiscal year. I'm like, Jason, we've got X amount of money and we need to spend it. We need to spend it because if we don't spend it, we're not going to get that budget next year. So can we just sign an open SOW with you? We'll figure out what we're going to do later, but we need to spend this money. And I'm just happy to accept it. I'm not happy. Okay, yeah, great. Sounds good. But though that particular production company, they allotted $5,000 to that. And if they didn't spend that $5,000, the next time around, the executive producer would have said, I'm not giving you $5,000. You only charge 500. And so knowing these ins and outs helps an entrepreneur increase their value, because you're only seeing from your point of view. There's a lot of other points of view. Uh,
And, you know, it's like I would make something that I would sell to production for $1,000 30 years ago. And then it would end up in an auction house and sell for $150,000.
Yep.
You know, just because of, you know, I mean, I have Johnny Depp's screen used Jack Sparrow sword. I have Keira Knightley's sword used in the same fight scene. Um, I don't mold things generally. I have a prototype that I'm working as a pattern to, you know, match to, you know, hand it off on set. So the prop master comes in, he says, "We're doing a battle scene and the swords need to be fixed." And I said, "Well, you know, when?" He says, "Well, I'm in Burbank. Disney Studios is down the street. It's filmed at Disney Studios. It's got to be back there within the hour." And I said, "Well, I cannot repair it within the hour." And he goes, "Well, what about these new ones right here?" And I said, "Well, those are my prototype samples." And he goes, "Well, can I take those, age them down, and use them on the fight scene?" I'm like, "Yeah." So I have, you know, Keira Knightley and Johnny Depp's DNA on a screen used sword. Who
Yeah.
knows what those are worth? You
Well, that's
know?
the thing. It's, Leo Fender in 1952 didn't realize that these broadcaster guitars that he was making and selling for $250 would someday be massive collector items that are worth $300,000-$400,000. Nobody knew, and you've created pieces you create usable art. Like the art that you make is used to make other art. It's like if you were to make instruments, which is fascinating. But then the artist that used what you made now creates more value for the art that you originally made. It's so fascinating.
So,
Uh,
Jason, you're saying I'm like the Stradivarius of sword making?
if that's how you interpreted what I said, then absolutely. And that's a good place to stop. Tony, thank you so much for joining me. I know that time is money for you, and you just donated a lot of that to me. So thank you for joining us. It's been great
You're
talking.
welcome. This was great.
Awesome. All right. Well, I will see you soon,
Yep.
and stay safe. Don't cut anything off.
Right. All right. Thanks, Jason.
You got it.